Since April of this year, AMD's stock price has increased by over 100%. So, with the company heading into their Q2 earnings announcement in just a couple of weeks, they need to come through with a triple beat. They need to beat on their top line numbers, their bottom line numbers, and provide positive guidance for Q3. So that is exactly what we are going to be going over in today's video, because the company is set to announce their earnings on Tuesday, August 5th, and there are some key metrics that they need to come through on to be able to achieve this triple beat. But let's start with what analysts are expecting for this stock. So for Q2 of 2025, there are 39 analysts covering the stock on Yahoo Finance, and they have an average EPS estimate of 48 cents. This is actually down year over year because a year ago, AMD put up 69 cents of EPS. So this is the first area we need to see a beat on. We need to see their bottom line outperforming this 48 cents. And I think that is definitely possible. And before we even dive into the metrics behind the company that will drive bottom line growth, we can take a look at their past performance. And they have never put up, at least over the last 12 months, EPS this low. We can see that 69 cents of EPS is what they put up a year ago. Then in September, 92 cents, $1.09 in December, and then 96 cents back in March. So we've consistently seen them put up almost double what analysts are expecting for EPS this quarter. And then alongside that, we can see the estimates from analysts have dropped significantly over the last quarter. Again, current estimates are 48 cents of EPS. However, 60 days ago, analysts were expecting 59 cents, and then 90 days ago, they were expecting 94 cents. So it seems like there is a lot of potential upside for AMD to come through and smash these EPS numbers. And this is likely true for AMD's revenue as well. There are 36 analysts covering the stock on Yahoo Finance, and they have an average revenue estimate of $7.43 billion. That is up around 27% year over year from $5.83 billion in 2024. But honestly, 27% growth would be a little bit low for AMD, because even in Q1, they put up 36% growth year over year. Granted, they had a smaller number comparing against. They only put up $5.5 billion in Q1 of 2024, and that increased to $7.4 billion in Q1 of 2025. However, one thing to keep in mind is this $7.4 billion would be the same as what they are expecting to put up in Q2 of 2025. So for revenue to be flat quarter over quarter, I think would be a little bit underwhelming for investors. I honestly think that AMD could come through with at least 7.5, maybe even $7.8 billion of revenue in the second quarter of 2025. If they were to put up $7.8 billion of revenue, that would be around 33% growth in terms of their top line year over year. And that would be a slight deceleration again from that 36% growth that they saw in Q1. However, it would still be more growth than we saw in Q4 of 2024 when they only grew by 24% year over year. However, one other thing to note from this quarter is they put up $7.7 billion of revenue. So $7.8 billion is definitely feasible for the company. There's no question that AMD's biggest growth factor is their data center revenue. That came in at $3.7 billion in Q1 of 2025, which was up 57% year over year. This was actually slower growth than Q4 of 2024 when they grew their data center revenue by around 69%. So that could be a little bit concerning if we see that trend down in revenue growth year over year in their data center segment. However, the other thing to keep in mind is we have seen so many tariff issues in Q1, and that has kind of translated over into Q2. So there might be some of that still affects their earnings this quarter. So it's not all bad if they do provide some positive outlook on what could happen with their data center revenue over the next couple of quarters. And honestly, when it comes to guidance, it's going to be very interesting to see what AMD decides to talk about the most. Because what I would assume they will discuss is the demand that they are seeing from China. Obviously, with the restarting of the ability of these these companies to sell chips to China, that could be a huge growth factor over the next couple of quarters. We likely haven't seen many, if any, sales in Q2. And what we will see is Q3 and Q4 actually see those sales start running in. And that could help boost up some of their numbers, especially top line numbers, over the next couple of quarters. So we'll have to pay attention to guidance and what that could mean for the company, especially with their year over year revenue growth. If they can get to 40, 45, 50% year over year revenue growth for AMD, this stock will easily be over $200 per share, if not even $250 per share. And the other thing to keep in mind is if they unlock this demand in China, what we could likely see is an increase in margins. As demand starts to expand, often what happens is these companies are able to increase their prices. And what that does is that increase in prices just helps their bottom line numbers. We've already seen year over year some increases in their gross margins, which has been positive, but we could see a lot higher jumps in these margin numbers, especially over the next couple of quarters. So again, in my opinion, I think we need to see AMD come through with a triple beat. However, this really isn't that difficult for them to achieve because we have seen EPS numbers dropped dramatically low, especially with the trade war and everything going on there. And we have also seen a similar trend for their top line numbers. So they should easily be able to beat on their top and bottom line numbers. But what investors are going to be paying most attention to is guidance moving forward, because we have seen these changes in the chip markets over the last couple of months as the trade wars died down, as they have unlocked this demand in China. All these things are going to factor in to how the company guides over the next couple of quarters, and that is going to affect how investors actually value the company. Right now, they have a forward P ratio of a 42.55, and their PEG ratio is sitting at a 0.79. Both of these numbers are well above where the company is traded over the last couple of months. However, they are still down from where it traded around a year ago. And you can see these expectations around guidance reflected in what analysts are expecting over the next couple of years for AMD's EPS numbers. Because for 2025, analysts are expecting $3.95 of EPS. That is up 19% from a year ago when they put up $3.31 of EPS. And this growth rate doubles for 2026. Analysts are expecting them to put up $5.79 of EPS in 2026. That is 46% growth year over year. So it's very clear right now that AMD needs to come through. They need to beat on their top line revenue numbers. They need to beat on their bottom line revenue numbers, because both of these expectations are already fairly low. But what is most important for the company moving forward is how they set up their guidance. What is the company looking at over the next 2 quarters? And then what are they seeing in 2026 as being potential growth factors for their overall business? And in my opinion, I do think that AMD is going to come through with that triple beat. They are going to provide great guidance, I think, over the next couple of quarters. And I honestly think by the end of the year, they should be able to put up revenue between $8 to $8.5 billion each and every quarter. I think that that's achievable for the company and a great goal for them to set over the next probably 6 months or so. But right now, this is the YouTube portfolio, and it currently has a value of $73,000, and we have a number of shares of AMD in this portfolio. And it's actually our third largest position, just over $6,500, and we are up over 105% on this position. We invested around $3,100, and again, it's over doubled to over $6,000 in total value. We have a total of 39 shares, and then the other kind of thing to point out is if the semiconductor market does very well, our portfolio should do very well as well, because we not only have AMD, but we also have Super Microcomputer. This is a $12,000 position, and we are up almost 70% on it. If you've followed the channel for a while, you know that I've built out these 2 positions over the last 6 months or so. And that's helped a ton in the performance of this portfolio. We've focused a lot on the AI and chip industry. However, our focus is starting to shift a little bit because the new industry that has gotten beaten down over the last 6 months has been the healthcare industry. So check out some of the videos on United Health Group as well as Oscar, because I think over the next 6 months to a year, we will see this industry start to turn around and it should outperform the broader market. But of course, that is all just my opinion. Don't buy a company just because some random guy on YouTube talked about it. Make sure you are doing your own research and looking into companies that meet your risk tolerance as well as your time horizon. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section, what are your thoughts on AMD? Where do you think it's headed over the next year? I honestly think over $200 should be achievable over the next 12 months. However, I'm interested in what you guys are thinking. What are your price targets for 2026 and maybe even 2027? So again, let me know in the comment section down below. While you're down there, hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this one. And as always, have a wonderful rest of your day.